The hook the moment the world turned its back asterisk. The conference hall fell silent the instant Dr. Hargrove announced, effective immediately, Dr. Maya Patel is no longer affiliated with the Institute of Modern Agronomy. A ripple of polite applause rose from the audience, but the real sound that pierced my ears was my mother's laugh, sharp and unfiltered, echoing across the stage. Ridiculous, you're a disgrace, Maya, you're chasing ghosts while we're feeding the world with real science. In that instant, the badge with my name slipped from my chest, and the weight of every whispered doubt in my family's kitchen settled like a stone on my heart. The painful departure and relentless pursuit. I left the institute that night with a single suitcase, a notebook full of seed catalogues, and a resolve forged in humiliation. The family home, once a sanctuary of Sunday meals and warm embraces, had become a gallery of scornful portraits, the dreamer who failed, the embarrassment of the Patel line. Their words were not just criticism, they were a verdict. I drove east past the concrete farms that churned out uniform corn, until the road gave way to cracked earth and a forgotten valley where the wind whispered through abandoned terraces. There in a dilapidated barn, I planted the first of the heirloom seeds I had rescued from a dusty university vault, a ruby red tomato from the Andes, a speckled corn that once fed the mire of Yucatan, a wheat variety that survived the droughts of the 1930s. Every sunrise found me kneeling in the soil, coaxing life from kernels that the biotech giants had labeled useless relics. Neighbors scoffed, calling my work a nostalgic hobby. You'll starve, they said, while the world moves on. Their ridicule was a chorus, but each seed that sprouted became a quiet rebuttal, a promise that the past still held power. The arduous ascension and profound triumph. The first season was a trial by fire. A sudden frost killed half the seedlings, a swarm of locusts devoured the rest. I watched my hopes wilt, feeling the sting of every family member's earlier sneer, yet I refused to let the soil surrender. I studied ancient irrigation techniques, built earthen swales, and partnered with a retired botanist who taught me how to coax resilience from the very DNA of these plants. Months turned into years. The barn transformed into a thriving seed bank, its walls lined with glass jars humming with the colors of forgotten harvests. I began sharing cuttings with nearby villages, showing them how a single heirloom bean could enrich the soil, deter pests, and yield a flavor no GMO could mimic. Word spread and soon a regional cooperative approached me, offering land to expand the project. The turning point arrived when a severe drought threatened the entire county. While the monoculture fields turned brown, my diversified plots, each species rooted at different depths, each with unique water needs, stood stubbornly green. The local government, desperate for food, turned to my team. Within weeks, we supplied 30% of the county's fresh produce, and the heirloom varieties became the backbone of the emergency response. Awards followed, the National Biodiversity Prize, a feature in Scientific American Asterisk, and an invitation to speak at the United Nations on food sovereignty. The very biotech firms that once dismissed my work now cited my research in their white papers, acknowledging that genetic diversity is essential for climate resilience. The ridicule that once echoed in my family's kitchen had been replaced by a chorus of respect from the world. The cathartic return and poetic justice. 3 years after the drought, I received a call from my mother's voice, trembling and hesitant. Maya, the town is hosting a harvest festival. We would like you to come. The council wants to showcase the new farms. I could hear the underlying tone, an invitation, a plea for redemption. I accepted, not for them, but to let the land speak the truth they had refused to hear. The day I arrived, the valley was a tapestry of color. Rows of golden corn swayed beside deep purple beans, orange carrots peeked from the earth, and the ruby tomatoes glistened like jewels. My family stood at the edge of the field, their faces a mixture of awe and shame. My father, who had once told me I was wasting my life, stepped forward, his eyes fixed on a single plant, a wheat stalk that had survived the drought, its heads heavy with grain. Dad, I said, handing him a handful of the grain, this is the same seed your great-grandfather planted during the famine. It fed our ancestors and now it feeds us again. He crumbled the grain between his fingers, the sound soft and reverent. My younger sister, who had teased me for talking to plants, tasted a tomato slice, her eyes widening as the flavor burst, sweet, earthy, alive. The council's mayor, a man who had once dismissed my research as idealistic folly, approached with a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the living proof that biodiversity is not a relic but a necessity. This field, cultivated by Dr. Maya Patel, has restored food security to our region. Applause erupted, and I felt the weight of every past insult lift, replaced by a collective acknowledgement. My mother, eyes glistening, reached out and placed her hand on my shoulder. "I was wrong," she whispered. "You were never a disgrace, you were a guardian of our future." The words were simple, but they carried the gravity of years of regret and the relief of redemption. Reflection, the lesson that grows with every seed. Standing there, surrounded by thriving heirloom rows and the humbled faces of those who once doubted me, I realized that the true harvest was not the bounty of vegetables, but the transformation of belief. The soil had taught me patience, the seeds had taught me resilience, the skepticism had taught me purpose. If you ever hear a voice, whether from family, colleagues, or a world that prizes the newest technology over ancient wisdom, telling you that your dream is ridiculous, remember the quiet power of a seed. It does not scream for attention, yet it persists, breaking through stone, thriving in adversity, and feeding generations. My journey from the conference hall's cold dismissal to this sun-kissed valley proves that the most profound successes are rooted in authenticity, not approval. The ledger of karma does not balance with revenge, it balances with truth, and truth, like a well-tended garden, will always find a way to bloom. I returned home not to prove them wrong, but to show that a single determined heart can rewrite a family's narrative, a community's future, and the planet's destiny, one heirloom seed at a time.